Welcome to the Skeptic and the Pastor podcast with myself, Rob Eickhoff, and my good friend, Paul Espinoza. Normally, Paul takes care of the audio end of this podcast, and he did. We recorded this week on Friday at my house, but somehow the file disappeared into the ether. So, thankfully, I had a backup mic and my iPad going. Was able to capture the conversation. So that's what you guys are going to hear this week. The audio quality is not going to be as good, unfortunately, but at least it's there. And also, apparently, I didn't hit record on the backup right away. I think I missed like the first 30 seconds or so of the conversation. Nothing important. So, and I didn't edit anything out on the beginning or end. So it's a little raw. It's kind of how I like it. The main subject of the conversation this week was morals and morality, where they come from, and all that fun stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy, and let's get into this week's episode. I sound too professional, but
yeah, I could. The nice thing is I could edit this out. This front part.
Yeah, that's all right.
Did you notice I edited something out last week?
I did not.
Dude, we listened to the first couple minutes.
Would you edit out?
So you said, I got to kill this light. It's killing me. I cut it all out, dude.
Did you?
And you and I would know. Nobody else would know. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I guess I got mixed feelings about that. Because, I mean, as long as it's nothing like offensive or, too bad.
Yeah.
Because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think people like hearing the realness of it.
Yeah.
Because I listen to some podcasts that are over-edited, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Let me retract that. Not over-edited, but extremely edited. To where there's very few pauses.
Oh, yeah. You can tell.
You're like, that's weird.
Yeah.
And you can tell when they splice conversations. Because somebody will be... There won't be really like a good transition to like a normal transition.
Yeah.
Just like a or a like. Some verbal tick somebody has, where they start taking them out, and you can pick up on it, man.
Yeah.
And that, to a certain extent, I don't know. I'm mixed. I like the realness of it.
Yeah, I don't think all that should be edited out for sure, man. I think it's just a raw conversation.
It is, and that's what I'm getting at. I like the realness of it. On that note, I watched that movie Gemini Man, the new Will Smith movie last weekend.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No.
There's a lot of CGI in there because the premise of the movie is old Will Smith, the real Will Smith I forget what his name is in the movie, is fighting, I won't spoil it, we'll just say he's fighting a younger version of himself.
Okay.
And the younger version of himself is definitely a CGI. I mean, it looks really good.
Really?
Like, what they can do with computers nowadays is super impressive. But you can tell. And like the biggest giveaway is when they get in close on the CGI and you look in his eyes. There's no soul. There's no depth.
Yeah, you can tell.
There's no depth. Different. And then when you look at Will Smith's character, the actual Will Smith, you see his eyes, and there's something more. There's something behind those eyes.
Yeah.
And that's where the mouth is a little weird. Like the mouth I don't think they have a tongue in the CGI.
Really?
I'd have to watch it again.
You could see,
there's some little things. I mean, by and large, it looks really good. The movie was entertaining.
Yeah.
But, it's so some realness.
Yeah.
We can't authenticity. We can't let robots and computers run everything.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. That's what I love. So if you're here with us, welcome. We're excited to have you back. You jumped right into the conversation with us, and that's what we're talking about, man. Just being authentic and keeping it real and
morals. Morals is today's episode.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So kind of precursor to jumping into the topic of the day, man. How was the last couple weeks for you, Rob?
Well, we'll get right into it, dude. It's been what I'm about to talk about. I've debated really all week whether I should bring this up, and even today, I was hesitant whether I should talk about this. But I felt if I didn't talk about this subject, I'd be a little disingenuous, because something we mentioned on a previous episode, we said that a lot of the reason we're doing this podcast is to explain our mistakes. We're not here pretending we're better than everybody, preaching to everybody that you should live like this, do like this. It's just because I'm a knucklehead, I make mistakes. I like to share those mistakes with people.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So they don't make the same ones. So, that being said, you guys might hear me. I'm going to try my best not to like cough or clear my throat, or I might sound a little sick. I'm not sick. I screwed up, and I'll give you the headline first, and then I'll backfill the story. I developed a chemical dependency on kratom.
Huh.
I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to a doctor to sort this out, but I know my own body pretty well.
Yeah.
And I am 99% certain this is what happened. So, that being said, let me explain. So, if nobody knows what kratom is, or kratom, or however you wanted to pronounce it, it's spelled Kratom.
Yeah.
It's a plant. And actually, I pulled up a good explanation of it here, so I didn't sound like too much.
This is good. I'm actually intrigued by the whole just what you're going to share, because honestly, I'd seen these like shops popping up, kratom shops, and then they're selling like vapes and things like that with it. So I'm like, well, what is kratom? So I googled it, kind of got a quick little quick version of what it might be, but to be honest, I'm ignorant about it. Like, I don't really know.
And that's another reason I think a lot of people are. They're not familiar with it. And so I think hearing my story and what I'm going through will help people go into it better educated.
Yeah.
So first of all, kratom, it's a plant, it's a tree coming from like Southeast Asia. And the actual name of it is, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Mitragyna speciosa is like the chemical name of it, or whatever, the scientific name.
Yeah.
And it's native to like Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia. And it's actually kind of like a coffee plant.
Okay.
And I believe it is illegal in a few states here in our country.
Okay.
Most states it's legal, you can get it. It's illegal, I believe, in like Indonesia, because it was cutting into the opium trade, into the heroin trade.
Oh, really?
Because, dude, it works. Like a lot of supplements, or if we call it a supplement or whatever, you don't really know you're taking it. You can't feel it. Like, say you take a creatine.
Yeah.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you go
trust the science.
based on faith.
Yeah.
Oh, it works for you, it's good for you.
Yeah.
Caffeine, you might feel caffeine, but as much coffee as I drink, like, dude, I don't really feel caffeine anymore. But kratom you can feel. And how I started using it, so I had ACL reconstruction, or actually ACL revision surgery, which that means they had to go in and fix the first surgery I had done like 3 years ago. I blew it out again. I had ACL surgery back in March. I don't like pain pills, man. I'm allergic to Vicodins, Tramadols, oxycodones. Like, if I take them, I throw up.
Wow.
I don't do well on them. So this surgery, like, you come out of it, it's painful.
Oh man, I can't imagine.
Because they got to go. I got 2 screws in my knee for holding the old ACL in. They got to go in and rip those screws out, basically. Put like a drywall dolly in there. Put some new screws in. Put the new tendon in, or ligament, technically. Sorry.
Yeah.
And
get a visual for that.
Yeah. Just think about that. Ripping screws out of your bone, putting them back in, and so it hurts. But still, I won't take Vicodins and stuff, man. But kratom helps manage pain. And it is an opioid. Okay. And it binds to the opioid receptors in your body just like an oxycodone does. Just like any of those. It works the same way. Okay. But it gives you like a good, clean energy. It does, and you don't crash from it. So not only does it help with pain a little bit, but if you're a little bit tired, or even if you're not, you take it, man, it'll make you like mentally sharp and clear. And you never come down. You don't stay high. I wouldn't call, you don't get high when you take it, but you feel good. Yeah. If you can remember like the first time you had.
Definitely a stimulus.
It is definitely a stimulant. And so that's how I started taking it. It was back in March. I was new to it, coming off surgery. I was like, oh, this helps with the pain. I didn't find it dangerous. So since March, I was taking it pretty regularly. I would take a couple of days off from it here and there, and then go back to taking it.
It's like you drink it?
It's a powder.
Okay.
I can show it to you. I still got some. I still got a whole bunch.
Okay.
I bought it from this website. I buy like kilos of it at a time.
Okay.
Because it's cheaper.
Okay.
So, and, so and it tastes like, dude, it basically tastes like if you went out in my garage and scraped the bottom of my lawnmower and then put that in a cup and drink it.
Oh, nasty.
Like, if you can just envision that, that's what it tastes
grass.
like. Yeah, it does not taste good. But you just mix it up real quick, slam it, and you're good to go. So I was taking, like, let's say, like 4 to 6 grams a day, which isn't a huge amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would take some days off. And, like, I didn't see any negative effects, right? Well, the story I'm getting to, this all kind of started like a couple months ago. Like, I was just busy at work where the weather's pretty rough here in Colorado right now. It's winter time. I drive in a truck for a living, so it's stressful, Sleep, like, I get home late and I got to be back to work the next morning, so I'm running on like 5-6 hours of sleep. I'm not justifying my abuse of kratom, but I'm giving this is all retrospect. This is all hindsight, because I didn't really understand what was happening with me until last Friday, like a week ago. I had this epiphany in the shower. So I'm jumping around a little bit. So, like a couple months ago, with this busy work schedule and just life, like, my sleep wasn't good, and I didn't know why. And so, not only with a busy schedule, when I would get sleep, it wasn't good, solid sleep, man. I was restless, and so that led me to be tired the next day. So I started taking more kratom. So I'd go from like 4 to 6 grams a day to like 8 to 10 to 12, and that just got to be the norm. And it got into this vicious cycle, because that is one of the symptoms of it. Is when your body starts getting into that chemical dependency, it screws your sleep up.
Yeah.
And I didn't see this. I didn't know this. So I'm just feeding this stupid cycle. Like, not sleeping good, tired, take more kratom. Not sleeping good, tired, take more kratom. Well, then, man, like a month ago, give or take, I just started not like feeling good. Like, just run, like, I'm pretty in tune with my body, man. I'm a pretty physical guy. I ask a lot of my body, do a lot of things. I pay attention to how foods make me feel, everything.
Yeah.
And dude, I just was feeling off. And still I didn't know why. Okay, maybe I'm getting sick. Never really got sick. Like, I just get kind of sinusy, like my sinuses would be draining, like, you think you're getting a sinus infection.
Yeah.
But your snot's never green. I never like fully get sick.
Yeah.
And then I'd take kratom and I'd feel better. But I didn't piece it together. Like, I was
so
like,
you started seeing these signs.
But see, I didn't see them until afterwards. I was in the shower last Friday, feeling like crap. And I'm like, dude, what is going on? I'm like, dude, I'm a healthy person. Like, why do I just run down? And when I'm so run down, I go to bed and I can't sleep. It's just like, so maddening. And then I remember hearing stories about people getting addicted to opioids. And it just clicked. I'm like, oh, what did I do to myself? So as soon as I jumped out of the shower, I jumped online and, started looking up symptoms of, opioid addiction and even kratom addiction.
Yeah.
Boom. And they give you a list of like 10 things. And I was just like, check. I'm like, yep. And that was it, dude. And that's exactly it. So maybe a more intelligent way would have been to like wean myself off of it, but that's not my style. When I do something, I'm just doing it.
Yeah.
That's how I got into this position. So I see myself, that's how I'm going to get out. So I just stopped taking it.
Wow.
It's not been easy because, and then they tell you the withdrawal symptoms. They give you a list like, okay, here's what's going to happen in your kratom withdrawals or your opioid withdrawals. You're going to get flu-like symptoms. The first 2 or 3 days are really going to suck. Days number 2 and 3, they were right, dude. Like, my back was killing me. My joints were killing me. Like, dude, just felt like I had flu. Oh, just rough.
Sorry, is that what's messing with your throat a little bit?
That's what you're hearing right now.
Yeah.
And so I got through days 1, 2, and 3 kind of feeling like that. Days 4, like most of the flu-type symptoms are going away, the pain, the aches and pains. But you still hear I'm a little sinusy, a little bit. Like, I got a cough a little bit. But I still get these monster headaches for the past 2 days in the afternoon about this time, and it hasn't kicked in yet, so it's good. I've been getting these nasty headaches. That's kind of going away. I feel way better today than I have been,
man.
and it's been a week. And they said, and they give you that timeline, man. They told all the things. Even one of the symptoms of the withdrawals is like a depression. So even the past couple of days, I've just been like super bummed out, but I know it's my body trying to regulate itself.
Yeah.
So I don't feed into it. I just like, okay, I put myself in this hole. I'm going to get out of this hole. Just deal with it. Suck it up. Deal with it. Just push forward and you'll get through it.
There's a shore on the other side.
There is a shore. There is, man. I got a raft.
Yeah.
I got my water wings on. I see the shore.
Yeah.
And so I'm pushing through it.
Wow, that's good, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, I'm happy to hear you're pushing through it, man, and hey, let me just say this, man. I think it takes a huge level of vulnerability to share that story on our podcast. You know,
it's embarrassing.
Yeah,
because it was a stupid mistake to let myself slip into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a mistake, man.
Well, what I think is great is that people they deal with all kinds of dependency issues. We all do, not just people. I'd make it sound like I'm not involved in that. We all do at different times, and that could be food dependencies. That could be the extreme from. And really, if you're listening today and you're kind of processing this information with us, there is going to be a time where we do a whole episode where we dive in a little bit more into the idea of opioids and heroin addiction and that kind of thing. And it's something that hits close to home. And so we're going to dive into that because I think it's a topic that people want to hear about. And we'll dig into that. But scaling it back to today, it's a story of vulnerability from you, Rob, that helps us all identify with, hey, I can identify with some area of my life where I've possibly let it get out of control. And then being able to turn the ship and recognize that and then say, hey, I'm with your approach. Like, I like that idea of just saying, once I recognize this, I'm just going, all in and I'm not going to wean myself off this.
There was days it was a mental fight. I almost broke down and had some a couple of days because I was feeling so bad.
Yeah.
I was like, I know if I just take a gram, you get this voice in your head like, just take a gram. No, nobody will know. You'll feel better, and you're still doing the right thing. You're still weaning yourself off. And I'm like, no. I just had won that fight. I was so close a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I know I'll feel better eventually. Yeah. And I am, because I see it. I see the shore. So
yeah, that's awesome, man.
Whew.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're on the other side. You're seeing the shore, and man, I got your back, man. If you just kind of like, hey, dude, I need to just talk to somebody right now or whatever. I got your back.
Yeah.
So for me, the last couple of weeks, have been pretty crazy in my life. In fact, before we started recording today, I was asking Rob, hey, did you do much homework for today's topic? And he's like, yeah, I did. Because I had the best of intentions to really hash out some material that I had been thinking about with today's topic. And it's just the busyness of life. And specifically, I'm moving right now. Currently, I'm actually homeless right now. It's kind of a funny saying, a funny phrase. Not that being homeless is funny, but sometimes we only think of homelessness as these kind of extreme. I live in the park, and that certainly is one depiction of homelessness. But there's a lot of people struggling through levels of homelessness at varying degrees. And currently, my family and I actually fit that criteria, man. We sold our home that we'd been in for the last 5.5 years. It was really comfortable. It was a great place. Actually, I'm going to link in this week's show notes the video where I talk about moving. It's a YouTube video I put together, but instead of trying to repeat that whole thing here, the bottom line is, we lived there 5.5 years. We've sold it, and now we're in a 10-day holding period until we move into our new place. And it feels weird, man. Like the last 2 days the last 2 days of living in the house and moving out were just taxing. I mean, I think the day before was like one of those like 16, 17, who knows, hour days. That was just like nonstop.
Dude, moving is a lot of work.
And then the second, day that we actually moved out, I mean, we had the new buyers were coming in, and they're coming to do their final inspection at 2:00, right? And we closed, we signed paperwork at 3:00 that day. And so we get like 2:00, they're showing up, and I'm like still cleaning stuff out of my garage. And I'm like, yeah, just getting the final few things. And I meet them, of course, man, I'm like, I've been working all day. I got like work clothes on. They're like, man, who's this bum, man? And so anyhow, it was chaotic, man. And but we made it. We had a ton of help, and for those of you that are listening and you helped out, man, I am immensely grateful. In my mind, I've been thinking of posting on Facebook to thank everybody for the last 3 days. That still hasn't happened yet. It's just me and social media don't always agree, you know. And but I'm grateful to everybody who helped out, because there's no way I could have done it. Mary and I were like, pushing all that we could, but we're out and got 10 days of being in transition, and we've got great people to stay with, and we're so grateful for all that. But I was thinking, on the night we moved out, I finally take the last load out of the house, and man, I just felt so lost, dude. It was the weirdest thing. I was like, man, I'm going to go to somebody else's house tonight. I've got to get my dog situated, and I'm just feeling this feeling of like, man, this is uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. That's exactly the word I was going to use. That is uncomfortable.
It was the worst. And and truth is, I've got a really comfortable place to stay for the next 10 days, and I've got great people around us. And so, but nonetheless, there's no place like home.
Yeah, it's not your house.
Yeah,
It's not the same.
It's not the same. And then, plus a major transition like that. We've been in that house for 5.5 years. My youngest daughter has lived there longer than she lived anywhere else in her lifetime. And so that was home,
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm sure within a few months from now, we'll be acclimated to our new place, and that'll be home, and there'll be a lot of good things there as well. But anyhow, that's coming into Friday afternoon when we're recording this. I'm like, you just feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to barely make it, but we're here.
We're here.
And it's
You
good.
made it.
Yeah. So, yeah. And topic of the day kind of was inspired by last episode. So for those of you that are following, we talked about Noah and the ark, and one of the questions that came up was, what made Noah righteous? And I think there's a lot of things that we can dig into and really discover there and try to follow that rabbit trail, but it brings up this larger kind of question about life. And the question is, where does morality come from? So if we're to say, Noah was righteous, or anybody is righteous, and when we use the term righteous, maybe we're saying right, upstanding, upright person, what defines that? And then how do we as maybe individuals come up with our own, and I'm going to use this term for lack of a better term, our own moral code? Because everybody has one. Everybody has a moral code. We just don't all have the same one. And then, there's parts where we probably align, and then there's parts where we're really misaligned. And I've said this, I think, on an episode. If not, I'll say it again. But it's this idea of oftentimes we polarize morality. So what we think in terms of right and wrong, and we only look at the spectrum that way. And a lot of times it's just different. It's not necessarily, right or wrong. It's different. And sometimes it's right and wrong. Yeah, I'm not saying it's never right or wrong, but it is different. And I think that would help us as we look at what I would call cross-cultural connections or cross-cultural communications. And that's exactly what I think we're doing, Rob. I mean, we're the skeptic and the pastor. And so in that sense, there's this cross-cultural connection we're making. Sometimes you got to look at things and say, hey, that's not a right or wrong thing. That's just a different thing.
Just different, yeah, because it's really easy. I found myself, when I was thinking about this subject, you can slip into moral superiority really quick.
Very easily.
Very easily.
Yeah.
And so you can't help but think about that. And you see it.
Yeah.
And we're probably all guilty of it at some point in time. You judge somebody's decision making based on your moral, because morals are subjective.
Yeah.
I mean, there's your big, broad spectrum ones, like we shouldn't go around killing people, we shouldn't go around stealing from one another.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them we can agree on. But when you start getting down to the nuances of life, it's very subjective.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to be judgmental sometimes when you see somebody doing something that does not align with your ethos.
Yeah.
Or moral code. So
Yeah, and then depending on your personality, you may be somebody who's actually really judgmental of others, whether it's verbally or not. Even if it's just a thought, you tend to.
You're still doing it.
Yeah, and others are less judgmental, I think. But man, that moral pathway for all of us shows up in the simplest things of life. One that came to mind right now, and this may, I guarantee somebody will resonate with this, but okay, when you go shopping and you're done shopping, do you go park your shopping cart when you're done unpacking your truck?
Dude, that's so funny. Because I had an episode on my other podcast, Grumpy Guy BJJ, with our buddy James Wilson.
Yeah.
It was probably a year or two ago. I think I had almost like a whole episode where I ranted about that.
Really?
I get so mad when I see people that don't either put it in the cart corral, or they take it back up to the store.
Interesting.
I get so mad, dude. I'm like, because then my judgmental side comes out. Like, I don't do well with laziness.
Yeah.
And I assign a negative trait to that when I see that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just lazy. That's just, to me, my opinion, like, that is lazy, that's inconsiderate. Put stuff away.
Yes.
You're just creating work for somebody else. Your laziness, that cart has to get into its proper place eventually.
Yes.
Somebody has to do it. And so you're just like, my time is more important than that person's time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it here. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
To me, when you do that action, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and
Put
I'm with
away.
you, dude. I'm the same. So I tend to, like, when I'm the same way. I put them away, and in fact, I don't often take them back inside. I'll be honest with you on that one. But I did recently, and why was it anyhow? Because it was. Yeah, either way. So I'm like, there's a cart place for them. Like,
Yep.
Take it back to its home, right? So I'm definitely more with you on that. But if I'm to be devil's advocate for a moment, maybe the situation is that somebody's just completely lazy and inconsiderate. Or maybe it was a young mother who has a crying baby that's in the backseat of the car, and she's stressing out and freaking out. Well, maybe. I don't know.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. But it really, and I'll tell you why it aggravates me so much, is because I don't know at what point I started, parking my car back where it belongs. I think I've been doing it a long time, but at one time in particular, I had got a brand new to me vehicle. I have it in the, parking lot. I was just going to call it a car park. I don't know. That's the Australian version. My friend used to always call it a car park.
The parking lot's called the car park?
Yeah. And so, or he also called, so anyway, I get this new vehicle, right? And I set it up, and I park, and I go in, I come out, and dude, the side of my vehicle is like smashed. And there's a parking cart right next to it.
Shopping cart?
Yeah, shopping cart. And dude, smashed. So I was already doing that, but then it was like, I'll never leave a cart out. I can't believe, I'm furious. I'm even like calling up, do you guys have security cameras? Like, I was mad. So anyhow, right, wrong, and then a lot of times just different. So curious, what were some of the highlights of maybe the stuff that you did pick up on this week as you did a little bit of homework for?
So, there's a few like major questions I think we should address. And one is where morals come from. Mm-hmm. And two, these are probably the two biggest questions. And the second one is, can you be a moral person without religion? So first of all, to that one, I believe yes, you can be a good moral person without religion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now the other, I think that question is pretty easy to answer, in my opinion. The first one of where does morality come from? That's a big question. I mean, we could do the rest of our podcast for the rest of the year on that subject,
totally,
if you wanted to. Obviously, it would be very exciting, and I think people would stop listening after about a week or two. But yeah, where does morality come from? Man, you can really go down this rabbit hole when you spend time thinking about it. And I think I'm not set in stone on this. I can adapt and grow and learn, and I'm willing to change my mind on it. But where I'm kind of settling right now is I believe it's innate. It's in us through evolution to be a moral person. The reason I say that is because it's actually kind of a selfish endeavor. And what I mean by that is, as a species, us humans, we've learned, through thousands of years, that we survive better in a tribe, in a group of people. It's hard. And when you were living in caves fighting off saber-toothed tigers, you had a much better chance with your tribe around you than you did by yourself.
Yeah.
And so if you were a jerk and you didn't have good morals, if you were always stealing your buddy's rocks, whatever in the cave,
whatever it was,
you're going to get kicked out of the tribe and you're going to get eaten by a lion. So immoral people just kind of got weeded out.
Yeah.
And you realize, like, hey, I need people around. So I have to basically build up my social bank account. So these people are there when I need them. I can depend on them. And I think there's a lot of things. You can look at a lot of different people over time, ancient people, to where they came up with these moral codes. But if you look at it, a lot of it was so they were able to survive and thrive.
Yeah.
So they could have a cohesive group.
So one of the takeaways is that it actually is selfish in nature.
You could look at it like that.
Self-preservation or survival in nature.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I'd never really thought of it that way.
I don't know how I came to that. I was just driving down the road the other day thinking, I was like, because of course I'm on the side of evolution. That's how we got it. I believe in evolution. I think that's how we got to where we're at today. And so what does it take to get there? And so I was like, well, you need people around, blah, blah, like everything I just explained. So yeah, I think it's in us. And that's where variance is. I mean, and obviously it's nature, nurture too. What, society and culture you're brought up in, your upbringing is going to teach you. Because when you're a little kid, I'm sure every one of us probably tried to steal some candy at some point in time in the grocery store.
I did.
You got your hand smashed.
And more than that.
Yeah, and more than that. But you have to learn things also. So hopefully you have elders, parents in your life that teach you what's right and wrong. Because some of the things you just don't know until you know, until you take it too far. And I've had, obviously, from what I talked about at the beginning of this podcast, I've been like that almost my entire life. I don't know how too far is until I hit too far.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oop, that was too far. Let's back it up.
Yeah.
And you learn those lessons.
Yeah.
So it's not you're not just born a great person. Like a 4-year-old doesn't know he can't go hit his friend and take his toy until he does it. And his mom's like, nope, you can't hit little Jimmy and take the toy. You have to share. And you learn as you go. But they're there. I think it is it could be looked at as kind of a selfish thing.
Yeah. Interesting, man. I think kind of a couple of parallels that I think are pretty obvious for me, at least, is, first of all, kind of the short answer to, can a person be righteous without religion or moral without religion? The short answer is absolutely yes. And to me, there's a backstory to that, and really, it's kind of parallels this idea of, well, we evolved that way, and really, what I think is taking the same language, which is ironic, and saying, I think that our Creator created as our DNA, His DNA rather, lives within us because He is our Creator, and so then that moral code, we don't necessarily have to learn it per se. We do learn it culturally, but it's within us. It is definitely how He created us. And so then we, of course, we evolve that. You said this idea of we could be on this subject for the entire year, and the truth is we could. And there's a lot of rabbit trails to go down and different viewpoints to be able to stand back and say, well, what are the viewpoints? Because I think there are some major viewpoints of where people obtain their moral code, if you will. Absolutely, evolution is one of those. That's definitely when you kind of think of, that a group of people that would, subscribe to that idea that, hey, we evolved to this space. Even creationists or theists, if you will, whether they believe in, the God of the Bible, the Christian God, or, any other God, there's these moral codes that they also follow, and they've over time adopted them. We live in a culture that is very postmodern, and when we hear that term, it's like, well, what does that even mean? I don't know, is that a term you've heard before?
I've heard, but if you were to put me on the spot and say, give me your explanation of it right now, I'd tap out.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I gotta do a little research.
I'll be honest, man, I would definitely be in that category as of, not too long ago, but I've been kind of forced to think about it a little bit. And the postmodern culture, without being overly long-winded about how we evolved as a culture, to this, is this idea that the three things it really ascribes to, and I'm trying to do this off memory, but the first one is that there's no absolute truth. So if you look at society in general, where we've come to as a society, and maybe I'm speaking more of a Western culture, but we've absolutely adopted this idea, by and large, that there are no absolute truths, which is ironic because that is an absolute truth. The second thing is that is that a postmodern culture adheres to is relativism, which basically, in a nutshell, says, I think, in the best way to say it is if that works for you, great. And what I've heard from younger people today, they say, you do you. And I'm like, I'm going to smack you, because
I've heard that before.
Because it just comes off like, I don't know, whatever. Okay, that's just that's the thug in me, I guess. Anyway, back on track. So relativism, which basically means, we're accepting of all views. Which ironically, and I would stand up for Christianity, because I think Christianity does have some different opinions. And the moment Christians stand on some of those, and I don't want to dig into what those are right now, but when we stand on some of those, then we go from we're all accepting to now you're a bigot. And I think it's not always fair. We're so relativism, that would be the second thing. And then the other thing is I'm losing the word, but the idea, I got the idea, but I can't think of the word right now. The idea would be that we begin deconstructionism. And so deconstructionism, what that really begins to do is we begin to deconstruct ways of thinking that have been long held forever in postmodern world. And so not only ways of thinking, but institutions, and we talked about that in our first episode, about how institutions became something that, the church is just an institution, and we become distrusting of institutions. And so that deconstructionism, I guess is how you would say
I'd say it like that.
So what it is we begin to deconstruct not only the institutions, but then even the way we talk. Everything's changing. And so to that gets us to this idea where ultimately everybody sees things from a different vantage point when it comes to morality, but there's these common. So again, we can be on this topic. I think this is where I started, and if you're still with me, thank you. But we can be on this topic forever, because morality is complex, and there's some things we're going to agree on. Out the gates, we shouldn't go around killing people. We shouldn't, there's some things that we shouldn't go around stealing from each other. But then, really you dive into, well, where does that morality come from? And does it come from an evolutionary process, or does it come from a creative God who had this amazing design to really give us this moral code, if you will? And then so when you look on the side of religion, we go at whatever religion it is, and we define these moral codes, if you will. In the Christian world, a lot of people will kind of go back to the 10 Commandments, And honestly, as a for the most part, as a good moral person, you can look at most of those commands, other than probably the top two, which are, you shall have no other gods before me, and you shall not create any, idols and worship them above me. That kind of those. Outside of that, you get into honor your parents. I mean, wouldn't most people that are kind of culturally aware, wouldn't they say, hey, that's a good thing, we should honor our parents,
Yeah, you can't really argue
you
against that.
You see what I'm saying?
There is exceptions to the rule.
There are, absolutely. And but generally speaking, we would look at a lot of those lists, don't steal from your neighbor, don't murder your neighbor. And you go, yeah, dude, like we should all be doing that. So religions, and I'm kind of using that as a blanket term for many, religions, is they're going to have a set criteria of morality that's going to come from, their belief system. For me, it's going to come from the Bible. And honestly, the 10 Commandments is really the tip of the iceberg. I think that, Jesus, when he came in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, he preached a sermon called the Sermon on the Mount. And in that, he really sets morality upside down, because in the past, it was like, don't, you shouldn't have an adulterous affair, for example. And he says, man, if you've looked at a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. And we all go, dang, dude, we've all messed that one up, So you really just see like the standard of morality changes with Jesus. But again, so my personal moral code comes from the Bible. It comes from the teachings of Christ. It comes from the story from beginning to end. But these cultural things, man, and I'm just looking at some of the notes I have here, but these cultural like things we teach our children, for example. So again, we also use this idea, right, wrong, or different. So culturally speaking, Rob and I are really good friends, and man, I just gotta say that publicly, like, dude, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
I really do, and I appreciate this conversation. Like, it forces me to like come back to this grounding moment, because my life is so chaotic sometimes, and I'm like, okay, I got to get there, and we got to have this conversation. So dude, I sincerely appreciate you on and off the mats in this podcast. Man, I was listening, having a good conversation with one of my friends this week, and he was just telling me he's going through a real trying time. Just lost his father this week, and he was referencing last week's last episode.
Was he?
And about just seeing the shore and just staying the course. And I'm like, man, dude, just encouraging him and praying with him. And so, Ruben, if you're listening, dude, love you, bro. And I know it's been a really tough time for you. But just know that, like, yeah, you're gonna make it through this, and you got some good people around you that love you, man. And so, Rob, man, I appreciate you, and but culturally, let me use something that's different. Like, you and I, like, we get a grapple together. Like, that is some close quarters, dude. Like,
yep.
like we're sweating on each other, breathing on each other. Choking each other literally. Like, I'm out to get you in this moment, dude. And if I can, I'm gonna, like, if you do not tap, you will go unconscious. It is an aggressive game we play. It's a lot of fun, but it's all love and respect, right? But as a good friend of mine, if you and I were walking down Main Street, Grand Junction, holding hands, that would be a whole different cultural concept. People would look at us and go, okay, that's just different, or maybe they're into that kind of thing. However, it would be viewed very different. I bring that up because culturally, in places like India and different parts of the world, it's very common for men who are friends to hold hands and walk down the street together.
Is it really?
Straight, dude.
After this episode, I'm going to Google on this one.
So
I don't believe you.
That's so great, because that response is exactly what we do, right? Because I'm like the same way. I'm like, okay, if I go to India and I got to go hold hands with some pastor and walk down the street with him, I'll be honest. I mean, it just would not feel culturally normal to me, right?
Right.
It would feel very abnormal, actually. And yet, there's even pictures with. I think it's President Bush. I'm sure you can find multiple presidents that had, but they're actually talking with different diplomats, and they're holding hands because it's culturally what's acceptable on that side of the world. So my point is, in all of that, is that it's culturally unacceptable here, but for us to like look at a different culture and say, "There's no way, man, I would never do that. There's just no way." It's us not realizing that, you know, there is that right, wrong, and then just different, and so. You know, part of that cultural upbringing for those children, because you mentioned about the kids, you know, toddlers, you know, learning, hey, you don't treat Jimmy that way. They're learning, like, when you're having a respectful conversation with another man, you're going to hold hands and you're going to walk down the street. And in American Western culture, we're just like, no, you don't do that. And if you grew up when we did, it was a lot less politically correct. And so there's things we would say that, you know, in today's world, everybody's just like taboo. You can't say that stuff. And it's like, man, we grew up, man. I like the way we grew up. It was just a little, in my opinion, I liked it.
A little bit rougher.
Yeah, I liked it. I think our culture, our generation can use some of it. Anyway, that's a whole nother episode. But yeah, that's a good point, right? Like, because, dude, literally, you're going to go after this and you're going to research it and you're going to go like, dang, he was right.
Yeah, it's funny. You get these weird memories in the back of your head. And when you say, you know, pictures of one of our presidents holding hands with another leader from another country, now that you say that, like, I'm pretty sure I've seen those.
You've seen it, right?
But I mean, I can't, like, there's a fuzzy memory there, but it's like, yeah, I think you might be onto something.
Yeah, dude. So again, though, the point is that those are like cultural differences, and we learn morality from our culture, and some of it is definitely the big ticket items of the right and wrong, things that are way up there that most cultures would agree with, but then there's other things that are just differences. And I think why that's important for me, or why I bring it up, is because recently I did a whole class called cross-cultural ministry, and it was really about kind of reaching in other cultures. And so one of the things that I want to do is I want to visit Brazil. And I've always wanted to visit Brazil, way before Jiu-Jitsu. And I wanted to visit because I heard about these homeless kids on the streets of San Paulo and these other areas. And so I wanted to go visit. And I wanted to go see and minister, and it's been a long time I've dreamed about it, but I kind of forgot about it. And now I really want to go back to Brazil, I want to, that dream has come back, is what I meant to say. And I want to go to Brazil, and I want to minister there, but I also want to go and do some serious grappling. And so, like, this two-headed monster of, you know, minister and work with people, but at the same time get some grappling in and train with, our team has huge camps over there,
right? And
so be able to train and that kind of thing. So
the religion is a big part in that culture over there, right?
Yeah. I think the denomination I'm a part of, which is the Assemblies of God, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'm at a high level. I have a level of confidence that particular in Brazil, it is probably the largest, if not one of the largest, movements of our denomination, if you will, in Brazil. I mean, it's really religious. I remember, speaking of which, what's her name? From Brazil. Talita. Yeah. So she came, I don't know, was it us, dude? We trained with her one day, and it was either you or Kevin, and you were saying about how you weren't religious, and she could not let it go.
She wouldn't let it go.
Dude.
Yeah, it was me.
How ironic.
Because I would pick her up and bring her to the gym and take her back. So her and I had some conversations, and she couldn't wrap her mind around me and like my worldview. Because we got into some of those a little bit deeper conversations. The fact that I wasn't very religious, or religious really at all. I was married at the time, and no kids. And she's like, how come you don't have any kids? I was like, well, I chose not to have kids.
Yeah.
I was like, I actually had a vasectomy back, and shoot, I don't even know when it was, like 2009 or something, 2010.
Yeah.
I was like, I've made that conscious decision not to have children. And she's like, what?
Dude.
And like, dude, she couldn't understand that.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'll speak to that real quick, and here's why. She can't understand it religiously, for one, but you also have to understand culturally the differences. Well, we live in a very individualistic culture. They live in a very pluralistic culture, which is, it's very inclusive. It's about family. And it's not to say we're not about family.
Right.
It's just culturally, Americans, Westerners in general, we tend to be more individualistic. And for them, it's all about the family. So for her worldview is just wait, what? She can't understand it. So she's so intrigued by it and almost probably judgmental of it. Mm-hmm. Like, Rob, you're wrong type thing.
Now when you just said Rob, you're wrong, I could almost hear her voice saying those exact words.
Yeah.
She's like, no, you're wrong. So.
And for those of you guys listening, by the way, Talita, she's, I don't know, probably $120. I don't know.
She's a little animal. Dude.
Yeah. She just
professional jiu-jitsu competitor.
Yeah,
travels the world, competes.
Yeah, beat me up for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I wanted just to try to go technique for technique with her, she'd smash me. Like I had to like break out some man strength to like not get beat up by her.
To save a little pride.
Yeah,
right?
To save a little bit of pride.
Yeah. No, so high level, but very much different view on the world. Just sees the world differently. And I think that is the challenge to morality is not only the big ticket items, but then, as we digress into the nuances, kind of what you said, the nuances of it and how we could spend a whole long time on this. And so, yeah, it is, to me, it's a very interesting topic, and I'm really intrigued by a lot of these differences right now. Not only because of our conversation, the recent class I did. I'm actually doing 2 classes that are really forcing the envelope. One's called Cross-Cultural Ministries, and the other one is called Developing a Biblical Worldview. And they are very, in your face about this information. And that's, if I would have studied more, that's kind of where I was going back to. Actually, one of my textbooks, it's this one. It's called Making Sense of Your Worldview, a Biblical Worldview. And it's totally intriguing because it does go through all these different types of, evolutionary thought. And it goes through not only evolutionary thought, but it also goes through, postmodern thought. It goes through theism thought. Another thought is, and I feel like this one is the hardest for me to grasp for whatever reason, but it's transcendentalism. But yeah, it's forcing the envelope for me to be thinking these things. And then in line with all that, we start this podcast.
What's funny is you mentioned, like the postmodern mindset, which is very prevalent nowadays. But the irony in that is that sort of becomes their religion.
Yeah.
It's an ideology.
Yes.
And people get rigid in their ideologies, morals or whatever word you want to use for it.
Absolutely. No, you're right.
And you have to be rooted in something. You have to be. And for you to completely dismiss religion, and so, because of the bad things that it comes with it, or the bad opinions or views of it.
Yeah.
But you dismissing all religions because of the extremists, throwing gay people off the top of buildings because they're gay.
Yeah.
Look at what are they? I think it's over in Iran right now that, they are so against gay people, like a man having sexual relations with another man, that there's part of their government that's will pay for sex changes for people. So it's not it's not
really
actually the man having sex with another man anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
You start getting into ideologies, it gets mucked up real quick.
Yeah.
And because you subscribe to one camp, and then you fall into that, and you start judging other people on where are they rooted in. Oh, well, he's rooted in the Bible, so everything he says is just nonsense.
Yeah. It's mythical nonsense. Well, and here's the ironic thing about, as you use the term muck, or this, one of the ways to describe postmodernism is to actually describe it as kind of a tossed salad, if you will. Because really what it is it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. What works for me, what works, what doesn't work for me, and it really is more of a tossed salad of beliefs. But even in that, it really is, like you said, people are ascribing to a certain ideology, a certain level of morality, a certain standard of living. And so I think all people are looking for it. It's just all people are going to describe it from a different vantage point.
Yep.
And some of those things I think are naturally going to align for us. It's ironic that I think, for example, going back to the start of this conversation about, evolution kind of getting us to that place, right? Like we evolved to this place, right? And then I think, like, in other words, but the key phrase was innate. Like it's innate. And that same thought process really for me is that I would agree that it's innate. I just think that the innate nature of it comes from a different place.
Right.
From a different source, from a creative source.
We're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But it goes down to the origin of it.
Yes, the origin.
Was it the Big Bang? And we ended up here and we evolved from tadpoles?
Yeah.
Or did the Creator give it to us?
Yeah.
But it's in us either way.
Dude. So here's an interesting, I read or I watched a movie. It's free on YouTube. I'll go ahead and tell you what it is. And, I watched it. I thought it was a good watch. I'm not, advocate of the movie per se and saying, hey, everybody needs to watch this. But it was interesting. And I almost sent it to you the other day. Hindsight, I should have. I don't know if you'd be interested in watching it, but it's called Expelled. The movie's called Expelled. You can find it. You know who Ben Stein is? Remember the Clear Eyes guy? This is your eyes without clear eyes. I don't know. He talks real monotone, so he's the host. Yeah. He's the host of it. I don't think he's Jewish. Actually, he's not a Christ follower. But the whole movie is built on the premise that there are these guys within the scientific community that are really genuinely asking the question of the idea of intelligent design. And so they're not, of course, when the evolutionary mindset hears that, they say, well, you're just advocating for creationists or theists, or, well, and to a degree, yes, theists, but religion. And these guys are arguing not necessarily. I'm not saying that follow one religion or another. I'm just saying that there is evidence that supports a creative design as opposed to the Big Bang Theory and we kind of all evolved. And so to make that leap from nothing to something, even in the scientific world, is a big leap. It does take a leap of faith, right? And so how you define that, there's a lot of science behind that and others that, but the bottom line is this, is that even in the scientific world, there's these questions. And it's not all coming from religious people. Some of it, yeah, let's be honest, that's, but there's this, and what the movie does is says, in short, it really, because it's called Expelled, they're not, the scientific community is shunning those who are asking the question of intelligent design. And so people are losing their jobs over it, from major universities and things like that. Like even just for mentioning intelligent design in an article, they're losing their jobs, and it's pretty intense. So it's an older movie. It's got two unique perspectives. It's not. It's pretty interesting though. It might be worth your time if you're wanting
check it out.
If you're wanting to kill an hour and a half at some point. It is a little dry at times and long-winded, but to me it was intriguing, but it really did juxtapose creationism or intelligent design with evolution, and specifically Darwin and what came out of Darwin's theories, which are crazy just for me, like in my uneducated mind, because Darwin's theories are, I don't know, what are they, 150 years old or something like that, 160 years old, maybe 70, somewhere in there. Well, the scientific advancements we have today far exceed anything he could have dreamed of, you know, and yet we still base a whole culture on this guy's findings from 160, 70, whatever, 1,000 or 100 years ago. So interesting. I mean, just that alone is like, we've evolved. Like, our advancement scientifically has evolved since Darwin's theories came out.
And bottom line, we still don't know.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we still don't know.
Because even for evolution as well as for religion, using a broad term, in both, it takes a great level of faith.
Yes, it does.
There is a faith leap in both sides.
Either side.
Yeah.
And anybody who sits there and tells me they know, for me, that throws up a big red flag. Yeah, I don't mind having people having other ideas or opinions or, well, you know, maybe this happened, that happened. But if anybody just sits down and says matter of fact, nope, God created this is it. I can't believe you think otherwise. Like, you know, let's pump the brakes.
Yeah. Well, the conversation ceases at that moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you're not open to new ideas.
No. Yeah.
You're not willing to evolve yourself at that point and listen to other ideas.
Yep.
And we don't know.
Yeah.
No, and we could talk the subject to death, and we still won't ever come up with a solid answer.
Well, how long has the debate been going on? Thousands of years. Yeah.
And we're going to keep doing it as a species, trying to explain things, because we're curious animals. We like to know why.
Yeah.
Why this? Why that? And it feels good to just subscribe to an ideology, put it in that box, and you can just stop thinking about it. Oh, this is it. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Well, and when, you know, speaking of kind of my recent study, you know, one of the things that really boils down to a person's worldview, how we all view the world, it comes down to a series of anywhere from 5 to 7 questions. But the 2 primary questions the 3 primary questions I would say is, where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going?
Right.
And every worldview, whether a theistic, transcendentalism, naturalism, which is more of the evolutionary thought, or a postmodern world like ideology, all of it is really trying to answer in their own way those basic questions of life. And so that's kind of these overarching things we're talking about, but it also comes back into the topic of today is, where does your personal morality come from? And I think every day, you know, we're trying to discover that, like, you know, what's right and wrong, kratom or no kratom.
Exactly.
You know, and you know, you guys got to know Rob's a super fit guy, and video's coming soon. We're inching closer towards video. Rob's a super fit guy, and you know, for him, I know he's really disciplined in how he feeds his body, how he works out, all those things. And so I always have, you know, a lot of Christians, they have this idea, what would Jesus do, you know, when they're thinking about issues of morality? Well, when I'm thinking about issues of health and what I eat, I'm like, what would Rob do? Would Rob eat this?
Oh, no, man. I don't know if anybody should look up to me in anything.
Yeah, dude, we should. Yeah, so I do anyway. Yeah. So, point is though, is that like we're all asking those questions every day, and we're trying to better ourselves. And you know, any final thoughts as a takeaway or a thought from you, Rob, as we kind of wind down today's episode?
Man, yeah, I have a thought. I hesitate to say this because I'm almost certain I've said it on another episode. I don't know which one it would be, but it's really the most prominent thought in my head is, you know, from the time you wake up and the time you go to bed, your day and your life is really nothing but a series of choices. And did you make the best choice in each moment?
Yeah.
When you are getting ready for bed at night, you're standing in front of the mirror brushing your teeth, are you avoiding that mirror? Are you happy with the person you're looking at? Like, okay,
Wow.
I made all these decisions today. Did I live up to my own moral code that day?
Yeah.
Wherever that moral code came from, who cares?
Yeah.
I could care less where you think it came from.
Yeah.
Did you make the best decisions in each moment that day?
Yeah.
And if you're really honest with yourself, man, maybe you didn't.
Yeah.
Then you just try to do better the next day.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because you can't beat yourself up on the decisions you made. You made the decisions. You put yourself in these positions. Sometimes you get a little off course and you got to course correct.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done.
It is, but I think that's some solid advice, a solid thought, because I think for any individual, whether you're a follower of Christ or you're, whatever you ascribe to in life, you really have to. At the end of the day, you're accountable for yourself. Like, like you said, when I look myself in the mirror, when I go to bed at night, or when I lay my head on that pillow, do I have peace in my heart? Was I perfect? No. I guarantee none of us are perfect. But did I strive to be the best person I could be that day? Yeah. Did I strive to do all that I could? Yes. Did I make some mistakes? All right. Got to chalk those up. Can I be better tomorrow? Absolutely. Every one of us can. And that's true about our morality. That's true about our relationships. That's true about our health journey. That's true about our mental state, our mental health. That's true in every area of our life. We can decide, hey, you know what? Today I knocked it out the park. It was a home run. Or today I struck out. I swung for the fences, but I struck out. And whatever the case is, when we lay our heads down on our pillows at night, we've got to let the past be the past, rest in that moment. And if we're graced with tomorrow,
Exactly. If we're graced with tomorrow, because it's not guaranteed.
Yeah, then we make the most of it. And so, I think those are some great thoughts. I would mimic that thought, man. Just look in the mirror and really have to ask yourself, did you do what you were compelled to do or felt to do in your heart? And as a Christ follower, I ask myself, Jesus, did I make you proud today? Like, when you look at me, not just what I did on a stage, to me that's not impressive. And I don't mean that to like minimize that role that I play, but I'm like, was I a good husband? Was I a good dad? Was I a good person with people who don't know me in a church setting? Was I a good guy? Did I live out that standard in all those places? And so, so I guess with that, any other thoughts, Rob?
No, I think it's a good place to wrap it up.
All right. So we'll catch you in the next episode. And until then, be a good person, no matter where you're at, no matter who you are. Rest easy at night, knowing that you did all that you could do that day to be the best you can be.
And if you did make mistakes, you can fix it the next day.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, hopefully. That's right. Yeah, hopefully. And if you're a Christ follower, that's where we thank Jesus for his blood that washes away all of our mistakes, sins, and etc. So, all right. Until next episode. Peace. Yeah. That was good, man. I was
That's great about an hour too, huh?